Welcome back to another episode of the Construction Lending Podcast. Are you ready to understand the nuts and bolts of construction inspections? In today's episode, we chat with Blake Walter from Walter Residential in Atlanta, Georgia. Blake gives us a clear vision of the challenges in new construction and renovation inspections and discusses the use of technology for efficiency in the field. From fuel points to inspecting with drones, we navigate it all.
I had to learn how to become efficient with my time and also lean on technology to help me kind of streamline that process.
Is it easier to do renovation or harder to do renovation than it is, say, new construction?
I think it's harder because you don't know what's existing. A challenge that I run into with draw inspections is typically draw inspection requests are very vague.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the podcast. Today, I'm joined with Blake Walter. He's an independent fee inspector in Atlanta, Georgia with Walter Residential. Blake, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we were talking a little bit before we started the podcast and, had a couple really good stories going. But, before we dive into a lot of that, I'd really like to know, a little bit about your company, how you got here. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about Walter Residential and how you got to doing construction draw inspections?
Well, kind of a funny story. I grew up in construction. My father was a general contractor and then decided to take a move to Florida, worked in software for a little bit and kind of just was ready to get back outside. And so started working for a company out of Texas that was turned out to be kind of a scam. And they got me certified through Internachi and got me started with the whole home inspection thing. And I started doing standard home inspections and I don't know, just felt like there was something out there that was different. I didn't like running in the same vein as everybody else. It seemed like everybody was fighting over the same inspection. So started looking for something different and ran across a company that was just looking for a little bit of help. I emailed them. They said, we're only looking for a full-time guy. And I said, well, if you're looking for something else in the future, let me know. And, for part-time or something. And they reached back out to me a few months later and said, hey, we're looking for a part-time guy. It ended up being, it was really vague and, ended up being a hedge fund. And we started out inspecting houses, really run-down houses, typically boarded up properties that we'd go inspect. And I mean, you name it, from squatters to all kinds of things, houses falling down. I inspected a house one time that was fire damaged and it had a huge hole in the roof, and the house had been raining in the house for what looked like about a year, and they just left it. And so I went and did as good of an inspection as you could do on it. And so we started doing inspections for the hedge fund, and it grew and grew and grew over about 3 years. We started doing about 3 inspections a week, and then it went from 3 to about between 5 and 10 a day.
Wow.
And so, and there ended up being about 10 of us inspectors in Atlanta. So we were looking at a lot of houses, and that kind of, like anything else, you work that much, you kind of get a little bit burnt out. So my wife and I had a child, and she's told me that, hey, you need to dial it back a little bit. We want you to be around a little more for our child so he knows you. And so we kind of started looking into other things, and she actually came across draw inspections. And so that's kind of how we got connected with that.
So your wife found the journey to draw inspections.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Wow. So, she finds something online. It's like, hey, you got to check this out. This looks a little bit more flexible, and, you're off to the races.
she is very resourceful. I mean, she loves to find a deal. So she somehow got on some forum and found somebody that said they did draw inspections. And she started looking up draw inspection companies, and that's how she ran across Land Gorilla. And so she is like, let's sign up for it. What can it hurt? And I'm like thinking, I don't know. Okay.
Oh no, that's
That's
great.
usually how most of the stuff works is she finds something and then she says, let's go for it. And, you know, in retrospect, I look back now and I'm like, wow, she's signing me up for it. There's no risk for her. It's just for me, but whatever, we go for it.
Has she ever gone out and done a draw inspection?
Oh, so she was a teacher for 9 years. So in the
Mhm.
summer, she'd go with me on inspections. And
Oh.
she told me after a while, after we started doing draw inspections for a while, she said, this is so much better than inspecting for the hedge fund, She's, she'd always tell me I need to park in the driveway, and leave my truck running. And so that, because she didn't feel super safe with some of these others. And now we go in to do these draw inspections. And around here, most of the draw inspections are custom homes. So, downtown, in the cities that we live around, and much nicer builds. Typically probably 1 million plus. So it's
Wow.
definitely an improvement.
So what do aside from, it sounds like you got a little benefit on the flexibility and having a kid on the way, you got a little bit more control over your schedule. What do you like about it?
I think one thing that's really beneficial is that the people want you to be there. So the contractors, they need money. So they're not really jamming you up or making it difficult for you to get out there. And so that's really nice because they work with you. So you call them up and say, hey, I just got a request for a draw inspection. Do you have any issue with me going out in the next hour or two? I'm going to be in the area. And they're like, absolutely. Here's the access information, or I'll meet you there or whatever it is. That really, really helps us as an inspector because we can just go, we can get it done quickly and send the information off, and everybody's happy. The lender gets their inspection back quickly, and the money is released much faster. So that helps.
No, this is awesome having you on the podcast. Most of our audience is made up of lenders or those in the lending community that they're out making construction loans or they're managing construction draws. So it's exciting to have this perspective from somebody out there, boots on the ground, inspecting these properties. Like, what kind of you really probably don't get to talk to a lot of lenders and trying to understand what maybe the way they're underwriting the loan or some of the decision making that's involved in accepting a builder's budget to build a home. But what kind of feedback, if we use this forum as an opportunity to provide a little bit of feedback from an inspector's perspective, what do you run across, that you think could benefit them? Are there things that you go out and you look at the inspection, you go, what the heck are they talking about here in this line item? And why are they asking me to inspect it? Or it doesn't make any sense? Or, what kind of advice would you give to lenders out there on how to better prepare the inspector who's out, inspecting these projects?
So I'd say and this is just kind of industry wide, but a challenge that I run into with draw inspections is typically draw inspection requests are very vague. It's even down to the point of you'll go into a house that's being remodeled, let's say, and the builder is requesting a draw on this remodel, and it'll say drywall repair. And you're looking at this question and you're looking at the house going, where? And you're just like, I don't know. I mean, I walked through the house and everything looks fine. So I'm guessing they did the drywall repair. Um, Not really sure, and it's kind of stuff like that. The questions tend to be pretty vague, uh, and that can make things difficult. Other than that, everything is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think that there is much industry-wide that I've seen. I've even looked it up on some of the companies like Internachi, and looked up training on draw inspections, because it's every type of inspection has its own unique kind of direction that you'd like to go, and so I've even looked it up, and there's really not much out there to help the inspector kind of prepare for what a lender is looking for. So more than anything, it's just experience, or trying to get with somebody else that has the experience in that field and have them fill you in. So if there's any kind of communication that a lender can provide to an inspector on what specifically they are looking for, that would really, really be helpful.
No, that's great. It makes me think of certain things with budgets, but would you say like a majority of those issues around like what the scope is for a particular item, like say drywall, is that mainly in renovation? Is it easier to do renovation or harder to do renovation than it is say new construction?
I think it's harder because there's you don't know what's existing and what I mean, you can see the items that are existing, but you don't know as far as like if you come in, like for example, I went to a house the other day and did a draw on it, and the house was probably 60% finished, and this was the first time that they'd ever called a draw on it. And I was just thinking, wow, like, and it's the same kind of thing with a renovation, right? If you're getting inspected by the city, you have intervals, right? Like you have to have your pre-drywall, framing inspection, all kinds of things, and you can't proceed forward unless you get these inspections. But when you're coming to a renovation, it doesn't really happen like that. They could work and do as much as they need to do, and then they call for a draw, and they may have closed up all the walls, so you don't know what plumbing repairs or anything that they've done. So you're kind of just looking around visually trying to inspect these things, and so that can make things very difficult with a renovation. The new construction's a little easier because I think that they call more often for a draw inspection, so you can kind of see things at different stages, so you know exactly what they're doing, especially if you have that property from start to finish. So you've been out there before, a few weeks prior, and so you saw, hey, I saw it when all the walls were opened up. I saw all the plumbing. I saw the electrical. I saw that kind of stuff. So you kind of know. But sometimes when you step into an inspection on a property that you've never been to before, and it's 70-80%, you're just trying to do your best to pick up where the last guy left off.
Yeah, trying to make some reasonable assumptions going, hey, we got drywall up, but is there insulation behind that drywall? So you're out looking, okay, they got a bunch of bags in the front yard in the trash heap, or I can see a little bit of drywall coming out right here where they're doing some electrical work. I think when I kind of, go back in time and think about when I was doing draw inspections, which feels like ages ago, but the ones that used to get me were, some of the ways that, say electrical and plumbing were segmented. It's like, underground plumbing, rough in plumbing, top out, finished plumbing. It's like, and that could be one way that you look at it, the construction project. And then the next one you look at, it's just one row that says plumbing, right?
Yes.
Or the different definitions on top out. And top out would, depending on how you search the internet. I remember searching that the first time going, oh my gosh, there's different ways, it's like the slab, topping out of the roof line of the house, and well, what exactly is top out? And I would always just be fascinated by the different terminology and the ways that things can be described. But I always found new construction a lot easier because either it was done, meaning it wasn't there in existence before, and it is there now, versus renovation where it's it's a lot more vague. So if I had to recap kind of what you were saying is, especially when it comes to renovation, the more descriptive, the more context that can be provided to the scope of work, the better outcome. Kind of, good stuff in, good stuff out, right? You give me a junky budget and you just put the word drywall on a renovation project, the quality of this inspection is going to be questionable versus, hey, you wrote me 2 long paragraphs of exactly where and what and how much is a lot easier. Is that the way you put it?
Yes, for sure. And yeah, just essentially being able to kind of give us an idea of what we're looking for and what you want in return. And so, because we're out there and, if you're doing a handful of draw inspections every day, you're dealing with a bunch of different lenders. It's like anything else. Everybody has their own style and different things that they're looking for. And so, we're out there and we're your eyes to see what's actually being built. And so we can provide you whatever you need, just as long as we know what we're looking for.
No, that's great to know. What are some of the other challenges that you run into? One of the kind of things that I gravitate towards is just locating the right property, especially in new construction. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was just driving down a kind of rural road looking, maybe this is it, and you're driving back and forth, spending 20 minutes just trying to find the place. You run into those same issues?
Yeah. So the trick that I do with that is I look for the permit. So typically on new construction, they have a permit box out there, and sometimes there's a set of properties I'm thinking about near me that they have like 4 or 5 houses in a row, all new construction, all current different stages of the process, and my GPS just takes me right to all of them. And so the first couple of times I went to them, I had to go check every one of the permit boxes and figure out which one of these houses am I inspecting right now. And thankfully, sometimes it was more than one, because that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, typically you have to go check those permit boxes because GPS hasn't updated yet. And sometimes, most of the time, other contractors are trying to find these houses, so they have some sort of indication that this is where the construction site is. I remember doing one. I think it was the first one that I ever did for Land Gorilla, and of course, it's always your first one that's like something crazy, and it was right at the end of a build. And they'd taken all the signs down, and it's in the middle of nowhere, kind of in the mountains. And my GPS was kind of taking me to this driveway, but it was this dirt road, and it was like straight up the hill. And I'm like, where in the world am I going? Thankfully, I have a 4-wheel drive, so I'm trucking it up this driveway, and I come to this T, and I look left or right. Somebody's living in the school bus over here on the right, and somebody's living in the camper, and I'm like, where am I? And so I go to kind of turn around, and up on the hill I see a brand new build, and I'm like, well, I guess that's it. And so I drive up there, and people were real nice and let me do my inspection, and all worked out. But it's always like that on the first one. I feel like really kind of testing the waters.
Oh man, it's not like you're going to a kid's party and there's a balloon out front and which one it is, right?
No.
My wife's so good about that, making sure everything's marked, and I think us guys are like, yeah, they'll figure it out. But Yeah, no, I'm just having all these flashbacks of feeling like I'm lost trying to find the right place. No, that's any advice, and the reason why GPS doesn't work is like the 911 address hasn't been updated yet, or it's still
Mm-hmm.
referring lot 28, and you're like, where, the sign's down. Any kind of proactive advice that you would give to an inspector of how to identify a property faster, how to find a property faster?
Um, so if you have a builder that's responsive, um, it's always easiest just to ask them. They can sometimes they're really good and sometimes they're not. Like I had a house the other day that I inspected, and I'd been inspecting this property for months, and it had a different address. And I came, and what I'd figured out later was that they were doing it off the lot address and not actually the address. They'd put the street name to help you find it, but it was actually the lot. And when I went there, I talked to somebody and they're like, yeah, that's the last house, because there was 3 new builds. And they're like, that's the last house on the end. And I was like, okay. And so I'm doing this inspection. Well, I get another inspection request for this house. And I'm like, interesting, same street, but I've never done this house before. And asked the builder, he said, yeah, there's lockbox code on it. Here you go. Okay. So I go and I'm like, no way, this is the same house. And I'm like, there's no way that I've been inspecting the wrong house, because I checked the permit, I checked with the builder, and what I'd figured out was they just been using the lot number and the street name as the address. And then when they actually got the address for the house, they changed it. So you got to be a little bit of a detective with
Yeah.
these, especially new builds. The easiest way to find a property is typically new builds. They have contractors that need to get there as well, and usually heavy equipment, or at least that's the way it is around here. And so they have gravel that they've laid down, and a lot of times the builders will have their sign out front, so that's really helpful. It's rare that you'll see an address on a property, for me at least. But the nice thing is, in the notes that you guys provide, you typically provide the builder or the contact name, and that has the builder information on it. So if you drive up to a property, and again, like we talked about, the GPS isn't always going to be accurate. I've had it where I've driven, it's taken me to a place and the house wasn't, but for like a half a mile further, and so you're going, I don't see anything, and then all of a sudden you see like a construction entrance or something like that. And sometimes you just got to be a little bit of a detective and be a little bit gutsy and drive down that road and hope you don't get shot.
Yeah.
Because you are trespassing, I guess. And so, but people are usually pretty friendly. So if you tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking for, they'll help you out. But looking for those builders signs and permit boxes and those kinds of things, that's really helpful.
Oh no, that's that is any from a technology perspective, and aside from anything Land Gorilla offers in our mobile apps, any technology do you think that can be helpful to if you're an inspector trying to run a business like you are, what kind of technology or what kind of apps would you recommend aside from Google Maps, right? What do you recommend for anybody?
So I lean very heavily on technology, and that's primarily because of my background. I've used to inspect a lot of houses in a day, so I found that if I did things manually or I had to come home and do things, then it was gonna be never ending. I didn't want to work a 12 and 14-hour day and then come home and work 2, 3, 4 more hours trying to complete these inspection reports. So I had to learn how to become efficient with my time and also lean on technology to help me kind of streamline that process. So the first thing that I did was I got a laptop stand inside my truck, which has my calendar, everything on it. My truck has the ability to have internet in it. So my laptop always has internet. And so it's always updating. Emails always coming up. I can see everything going on right there. It's kind of like a dashboard per se for my business and what I've got going for that day and for the week. And so if somebody calls you, you can have everything open right then and there. That makes things easier. One of the second things that I did, which was out of necessity, mainly, I was doing a lot of roof inspection for a big client, and I do like 7 a day, and they needed them done every day. And so if it rained, I was really in trouble because I'd have 14 the next day on top of my other inspections. And so, and here in Georgia, the houses are big. So my wife, who's a teacher, would come with me during the summers, and she saw me up on some of these houses. And here we kind of live north of Atlanta, so it's mountains. And she'd see me scooting down these roofs. And, typically if you're doing a roof inspection, it's because there's something wrong with it. So there was a few roofs I got stuck on, and she told me, she said, one day you're going to get a bad roof and you're going to come off of that roof and you'll never be the same again. And she was like, you got to do something different. And I said, the only thing I can think about doing is I could get a drone. And she looked at me and she said, well, it's cheaper than a hospital bill. And I said, fair enough. So we got a drone, and to be honest, I've never looked back since. It's allowed me to do all kinds of things. It allows me to provide a better inspection for the client, because I can see things that you couldn't access normally. So just areas of a roof you couldn't access just because it's too dangerous. And then you can also get aerial views of the property, of the roof, of the structure, of other structures on the property, and it really kind of gives everybody a better perspective of that property. I'd say that those are probably two of my main things, and then I'd say the third thing that I would really invest in is a really good quality phone. So because everything that you do is on your phone, so you need a good camera. You need it to be fast because you take so many photos, so many photos. And so you just need something that's going to work. It's going to work well, and it's going to hold up for you. And so
iPhone or Android? That's the question there. Right now. iPhone or Android? This is a big deal.
For me, I have the iPhone.
There you
go. Mainly because I'm on the Apple platform. I have a Mac and all that stuff. So I did have an Android before. A few phones ago, I had an Android, but for me, the Apple just has been easier, and it seems like, I could be wrong, but it seems like a lot of the inspection companies support the Apple platform really well. And so it just has kind of made my life a little easier to have the Apple phone, but I think everybody has their own preference.
Yeah, it's interesting that, to kind of add context to that. I know with our product teams and the mobile apps that they do for the inspectors, the Android platform really gives almost like too much opportunity for design and configurability in the platform. And I think the big differences that you get between the two platforms is with iOS, there's a lot more conformity and standardization. So the expectations of the next thing is, oh, here's what this next list should look like, or this is a button, or, this is going to open up a page. Whereas with Android, there's a lot, well, does this function like that? Or does this open up the next? A lot more questions, I think, come to my mind. But, I think I have both sitting around here somewhere. I got an Android for some testing, but, it's just, I love that they all sync together, things upload automatically and do all that. And I love that you get internet in your car And I love the drone. Like I'm so glad I asked that question. It was way more than I was expecting. Now here's a big question. How many miles are you driving on average?
Oh man, I don't drive as much these days as I used to. I used to put between 250 to 300 miles a day on my truck. Um, I took almost a year off. I bought a truck in 2020, took a year off from driving that much, and I have 100 and almost 25,000 miles on my truck. So I'm pretty much living it.
Yeah, I think I want to say our gas prices are high sixes, low sevens, kind of throttle right there in California. And, we're probably in a higher cost area. But what is gas prices in Atlanta? Make me feel bad.
So to make matters worse, I drive a diesel because we have a camper. Yeah, so here it's like $4 a gallon. But my wife, she's a deal finder, and so she shops at the specific grocery store, and so I get about $1 a gallon off every time I fill up, which is really good because it's usually 2 or 3 times a week, and it's about $100 a tank. So it's a lot.
That's a good tip for inspectors is like, where and how do you buy your gas? I'm kind of we've got Costco out here and right near the house. And it's like, oh man, I got to go wait in line, but it's $1 cheaper than everything
Yes.
else, or significantly cheaper, I should say. And, any recommendations on like where to get the good gas deals? I got my Vaughn's card. I plug in the number. I get 20 cents off a gallon when I do that. It's sounds like you have one.
So, and I didn't find this. My wife, she's the deal finder, but she figured out that Kroger is right down the street from us. We have Costco, but they don't have diesel, and so she found out that Kroger offers 4 times fuel points if she shops on Friday. So what she found was they also offer 4 times fuel points on gift cards, and so we will go buy. She's like, well, we'll go eat it, go get a burger, we'll go whatever this week. And so she'll just go buy gift cards for the places, and she gets 4 times fuel points on all these things that we're already going to go purchase, later in the week, or Amazon or whatever it is. And so she gets all these fuel points, and it's wild because we get $1 off a gallon, and it'll save about $30 per tank for my truck. And so
that's your retirement right there, Blake. When you do the math here, I'm calculating this out, 400, 200 miles a day. That's you're filling up once a day, and 30, that's your future right there. That's amazing.
Yeah. When things get expensive, you got to get creative. And I kind of thought she was ridiculous in the beginning. And now, as it's kind of progressed, and you just realize how much we save. If I need to go buy something for my business, I go buy a gift card on Friday, and I'll purchase it through my business, and we'll just get more fuel points. And that way, because, they also, you can, like, for example, we're in December right now, and we can still use fuel points from November. So when you drive as much as we do as inspectors, you have to get kind of creative with it. And I feel like the fuel economy is on these vehicles is not getting much better. So, and I've looked into electric vehicles and those kinds of things, but typically with draw inspections, it's, for me anyway, around here, it's typically new builds. And so you need some sort of truck or SUV, because I can't tell you how many times I've had to put it in 4-wheel drive just to get up the driveway of these properties because they don't have a driveway yet. So, and it's, out here, it's always raining, and So you kind of have to have something that's a little higher off the ground and potentially have 4-wheel drive. So a lot of the and because we drive so much, it's kind of knocked out some of the EV vehicles. So you're kind of looking at a truck or an SUV, and typically those don't get great gas mileage. So
what I've learned here today, I got to tell you what I've learned here today is, when our team was talking about, just what a great guy you were, and what great work you've done, and this amazing business that you've built. I was like, oh man, we gotta talk to Blake on the podcast. This is, I'm really curious on the insights and just how you grow a business the way you did, and the way as fast as you did, and the way you did, and how successful it's been. And my big takeaway is we got to meet your wife.
Yes.
We got to bring her on this podcast. I mean, she's got some amazing insights to hear. And
I'm gonna be honest. I'm out in the field doing the inspections, and she's in the office doing everything else. So I feel like I have the easy job, but she's the one that's hunting and finding all the deals, and she honestly, like I said, she brought me to Land Gorilla. I'd never heard of anybody that did specifically draw inspections, and now it's such a huge part of our business, and it's really honestly it's improved my life because I'm able to be home with my family more, and for that I'm grateful.
Well, man, that's pretty touching. I don't even know what to say about that. I don't think we ever kind of imagined that kind of an impact on somebody when we started this company. So, thank you very much for saying that. Towards the end of the podcast, we roll into, what we call traditionally, what we do with lenders is we go into this rapid fire session and ask a bunch of questions. And, I was kind of thinking about this, and kind of already asked some of them along the way about gas prices and that experience. But your response right there has just definitely thrown me off and got me a little emotional. So we'll do a little modified version of the rapid fire. Okay. And I think one of the relevant questions that we like to ask construction lenders is, would you ever build your own home?
It's hard being in this field. Everything that you do, you're looking for issues, and so we've talked about this. Well, my wife and I have talked about this a lot, and it would really be tough to build our own home. Just because you see all the issues, and the inherent problems, and essentially you're building your own home, you're becoming the general contractor. It doesn't matter if you hire one or not, but it's kind of the nature of the beast as an inspector. You're looking for all the problems, and so and that there are problems, and there will always be problems with construction. It's just kind of the nature of the business. I mean, there's so many pieces of raw material that somebody is having to cut and nail and glue and screw and all kinds of stuff, put it together, and there's just going to be problems. And so I sometimes I think about this question, and I'm just like, I just don't know if I have the headspace for it, to be able to kind of be on somebody enough to be like, just, you guys missed a bunch of stuff over here. You need to come fix it.
Where's my roof?
Yes.
I think your wife probably has the stomach to build the home. I think she's.
Sometimes I feel like if she could handle it and just call me for questions, it'd be better.
Oh, that's you mentioned something there that really stuck out. I think it's probably the most truthful and, realistic set of expectations that people need to understand is when they do go to build their own home. Yeah, you may be working with a general contractor, but at the end of the day, you're really filling that role as the general contractor. You at the end of the day, as the individual, are truly responsible for making sure that it gets done. And
Yes.
you're the general contractor on top of the general contractor, and a lot of people don't understand that. So that's really valuable kind of takeaway from that. Somebody here's the next question. Somebody interested in becoming an inspector, outside of your coverage area, of course, right? That's listening to this podcast, right now, is trying to figure out, does this sound right for me? What kind of questions should they be asking themselves, or what kind of advice would you give them if becoming a draw inspector is a good fit? How do you know that that's it's right for that person?
So, one thing that I always tell people, because they hear what you do, and it seems like a lot of people, it's a pretty common thing for people to look at being an inspector, because it offers some flexibility. You can kind of set your own schedule, and you get to go into new builds, and there's a lot of like neat things. I mean, I see all kinds of new construction, pretty much every day. And you see all kinds of things that you're like, wow, I didn't even know that this was a thing. I saw lights in a shower niche the other day, and I was like, oh, cool. Like that's so smart. I've never seen that, and I've been into thousands of houses, and I've never seen that. And so, in that regard, it's really neat. I think the one thing that I would suggest if I had to do this over again, I'd probably recommend, if you can, work for a company or contract for a company, because a lot of these inspection companies, especially the ones near me, they do a really good job training their people. And so you can essentially work with people that are experienced. You can kind of get an idea of how to do inspections. You can work with people that have done inspections, and you don't have to go through all that process on your own and figuring it out on your own. Of course, like anything else, you don't make as much as you would owning your own business, but you also don't carry the risk as much either. And starting out of the gate, you don't necessarily need insurance and all that other stuff if you're working for somebody. So I would recommend finding a local company near you that would be willing to train you and kind of like help you kind of move up that way. And then if it's something you're really interested in, then strike out on your own and do something. But I did it the hard way. I just took the course. I had construction background, so that helped. But in the first year, I'd say it was pretty slim pickings for me. Man. So I would say if you can get with somebody, you'll ramp up a little faster.
That's great advice. You mentioned earlier when we started this podcast about kind of getting looped into almost like a scam, like your first one. Any advice you'd give, hey, stay away from that. And you don't have to name them if you're not comfortable, but what should they watch out for not to get taken advantage of?
Well, in the beginning, because we didn't have any work, we were looking for work anywhere that we could get it. And I was a new inspector, so I didn't have any contacts or anything in that industry. And so we tried all kinds of things. We tried Thumbtack, we tried Home Advisor. We found companies online that were doing kind of mortgage style inspections. And to be honest with you, nothing really came of any of that stuff. For us, the paid leads really, when we needed income, they sucked the life out of us. And we were like, this $50 or $150 for these leads is we're thinking, well, if we do the inspection, we're gonna get the return. We'll have some sort of income, and then the thing would never pan out, and you don't get any of your money back. And so that really, really was hard on us in the beginning. Unfortunately, when you don't have any kind of traffic of leads and stuff coming in, you're open to try whatever you can. So I would probably, that's kind of why I said I would steer towards working with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can get a little bit of experience under your belt and kind of stay away from some of those kind of paid leads and that kind of thing. That was we actually got mail a couple of days ago from one of those companies that we paid that really took us for a lot of money, especially at the time, and they are getting sued, and so they were sending us some money back because they had been sued for their shady practices. So,
wow, that's going to make some good fire kindling.
Yes.
But this has just been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Now, for any banks or any other inspection companies that are interested in getting in touch with you and engaging with your services, like, how should they go about getting in touch with you? Do you have a website? You got an email address, LinkedIn profile? How do they get in touch with you?
Yes, we have a website. It's walterresidential.com. And my email is just blake@walterresidential.com.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for being on the podcast today. You're such a wealth of information, and you and your wife have just built an incredible business, and we're really happy to be doing business with you. So thank you for being on the podcast today, and look forward to the future with you.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it.
This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and does not replace independent professional judgment. Land Gorilla Inc. makes no representations, warranties, or promises for and disclaims any express or implied warranties related to content. Before acting on any information, you should consider the appropriateness of the information as it pertains to your unique business needs.